Alrighty, we are live. Hopefully everyone can hear us okay. There's a chat on the side of the browser. If you just jump in there and drop a message, let us know if you can hear us all okay and see my screen okay. And we'll just give it a couple of minutes before we kick off. Hey Tim, Becky, nice to see you all. And we'll be using this chat to answer any questions later on in the webinar as well. So really excited to have Kim joining us today. And so if you have any questions for her around, achieving a 0% eviction rate for your rentals, then obviously drop those questions into the chat on the side there. Hey Val, Damien, Joel, awesome. Great to see you all in here. We'll give it a few more seconds and then we will jump into it. And we'll be covering quite a lot of different content today, including, how to screen tenants, how to choose the right tenants, all that sort of good stuff. So again, if you've just joined us now, make sure you use that chat to drop any questions in here for either Kim or I, and we'll answer those either as we go through it or right at the end in our Q&A. Hey, Kiana, good afternoon from New York City. Nice to see you in here. All right, let's jump into it. So I'm Logan Ransley, co-founder of Landlord Studio. Today, I'm thrilled to have and introduce and welcome back a guest we've interviewed and had a podcast before. So Kim and Kim Avant-Babb. Kim's a real estate investor, author, landlord strategist, and entrepreneur. And we're really excited to have her join us today and share some of her knowledge particularly around achieving a 0% eviction rate. So she's the co-owner of two companies, Babb Properties and Legacy Real Estate or Real Consulting. Along with her husband and business partner, she's been self-managing rentals for family members and herself for incredible 40 years. Is that correct, Kim?
That's correct. 4 decades.
4 decades. And she's managed to achieve a 0% eviction rate throughout this time, making her, the perfect person to share her insights and strategies with us when it comes to, finding and selecting the best tenant for your property. So great to have you here today, Kim. Really excited. Maybe give it a little bit of an introduction about yourself if I've missed anything.
Sure. Thank you so much, Logan, for inviting me back. You're right. I was here in this global conversation about property management with you last year, how time flies. And yes, my husband and I have been, chugging along, educating ourselves, thriving, and growing in this property management space for 40 years. We just on June 30th celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. So we made it through, to the business and the property management milestone. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get more into me as we go into the conversation.
Well, congratulations on that. And we're really excited. So let's sort of cover off what we're going to cover in in today's webinar. So there's sort of 4 main topics that we're going to cover. First is setting the tenant criteria, how to establish clear and consistent criteria to attract, the right tenants for your rentals. Obviously, the next part is the lead generation and pre-screening leads process. So, the effective strategies for generating quality leads and pre-screening potential tenants. And then we'll jump into sort of running tenant screening reports, understanding them, key aspects of running and interpreting screening reports so that you can make informed decisions. And then finally, we'll discuss a little bit about how you keep tenants happy, improving retention rates, practical tips for maintaining a good tenant relationship and ensuring the sort of long-term retention of that tenant in your property. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. And again, if you have any questions, drop them into the chat. We'll cover those off at the end of the webinar. So first of all, the first step to sort of securing a great tenant is, knowing what makes a great tenant and having a strict set of criteria that you can apply to your applicants. And so I guess my first question for you, Kim, is, when it comes to setting the criteria, can you let us know into some of your insights into what it is you're looking for, and how do you set this criteria when you're actually getting the new tenants?
Sure. And that question is standard within the industry. It hits a couple different areas like credit scores, financial stability, and or having consistent income or employment. Um, Having a rental history, that kind of thing. However, for me, my school of thought is really supported by the 2.5 decades that I did in New Jersey state government, working for the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority and underwriting redevelopment deals. The NJRA, as they're called, is a state financing authority, and I worked as an underwriter. So I had the benefit of taking a lot of that skill set and like criteria into my business around setting criteria for viable applicants to rent our properties. Because as landlords, we're actually creditors, right? We're exchanging a living abode in exchange for rent. So I'm looking at that transactionally and underwriting that tenant to make sure that they have the financial viability and the track record and the history to pay the debt, which is the rent.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and you would have learned a lot just in that previous sort of role as well, as you go through this process. Um, in terms of when you're setting these rent criterias, what are some sort of specific examples when you're looking at income, financial stability, criminal background check, rental history, all that sort of good stuff?
Well, you definitely want them to have a respectable credit score, right? Because in our society, globally, your credit score is really a report card of your integrity around paying back what you say that you're going to pay back. It's basically a report card. So setting a credit score that is acceptable to your company, whether it's 650, 750, whatever it is, identifying what that credit score is and articulating that in your documentation, i.e., your application. Understanding what's comfortable for you as a company regarding rental history. And there's two different sides of the spectrum. We've had college, young people that were moving into our area that were going to college who have no rental history. They're moving from mom and dad's house, right? So you've got to determine a level of comfortability from a business perspective in sizing up that applicant, that young person. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have applicants who have a lot of rental history. They may have rented, 3 or 4 previous units. So you can look at those separately and determine from a business perspective what's acceptable. And then income, income and financial stability is important. You got to follow the money. You got to determine where the funds are coming from to pay you as a creditor. And on our application it says a full time, full time job or evidence of consistent income, because we don't want to discriminate against someone because people get income from many different ways. So you want to track the money. You want to be able to have documentation to confirm that they've got an income stream to pay you as a creditor. Criminal background checks is very seedy right now, depending on where you are globally and particularly in the United States. I know in the state of New Jersey, there's been a recent law passed for not affordable, but allowing past individuals with past criminal records to not be discriminated against because of their criminal background. So, what I say to my coaching students and what we do for our company, based on the fact that we live in New Jersey, but our rentals are in Pennsylvania, read your state's laws. Be familiar with what recent laws are on the books as relates to criminal background checks, in addition to evictions.
I think that you highlight a good point there around, staying on top of the laws. And I think quite important to, stay in contact with a lawyer, attorney, making sure that any sort of state laws that change, you are keeping on top of that. And I think that's quite key. So if anyone has any questions specifically about laws, I would recommend reaching out to an attorney. There's some really good ones out there specifically for real estate as well.
And Logan, if I could add, one homework assignment that I give to all of my coaching students is to read your state's landlord tenant law. Like that is the basic, foundation of knowledge that you must have, whether or not you're self-managing or you're hiring a property manager. Read your state's landlord tenant law.
And we have a full list of all the state laws on our website, actually, landlordstudio.com. You can find it there. I'll also send that out as a link in the follow-up email after this. So I guess sort of moving on. So, setting the criteria is an important step for staying compliant with, fair housing laws, as we've sort of talked about. And it allows you to establish a fair practice based on, allowable factors, gives you concrete reasons to deny or accept an applicant. So I guess just going a little bit into this state laws aspect a little bit without giving legal advice, obviously, just some guidance. Could you go into a little bit more about, I guess, the fair housing laws, and when it comes to selecting a tenant, how do you sort of communicate your tenant criteria to applicants? And what happens should a tenant question your decision?
Well, first of all, you have to be familiar with the Fair Housing Act law. It's a federal law in the United States. I'm not sure, how it fares in New Zealand, but it is a federal law that you cannot discriminate on individuals based on the protected classes of race, religion, sex, disabilities, and a couple of others. So you have to be mindful of that when you are just, basically creating your rental application, because that's really the first means of communication to someone who's interested in applying for your rental unit. So there can't be any discriminatory language on your application, like must be Christian, or limited to 2 kids, or things like that. So your written language on your application is really a starting point that must be fair and equal to anyone who wants to apply to rent your property. You have to be consistent in your criteria, so that someone who's inquiring, you're not saying one thing to one person and another thing to another person based on who they are, if it's a male or a female, So have that standard criteria written on your application. And again, be careful of your language. You cannot be discriminatory. You can't ask how many children they have. You can't ask if they're married or single and things like that. So familiarize yourself with the Fair Housing Act to brush up on what you can say and what you can't say. And also how to be tactful in your response to applicants who might ask you, so how's the neighborhood? And depending on, where your unit is, if you're in a gentrified neighborhood, if you're in a low income neighborhood or a luxury neighborhood or whatever, you have to be mindful as that property owner and spill over, if you're the property manager, how you respond to that question, right? In the past, we've been asked that question, and our response is, I encourage you to, do your research about the neighborhood, become familiar with it. I really can't say more than that. So know your parameters, because if someone, is needling and kind of borderline thinking that they are being discriminated against, you don't want to open up yourself to be exposed to a lawsuit.
That's really interesting about even just talking about the neighborhood and how it is, because it might seem quite subtle and less relevant to the tenant themselves, but I guess that can open the conversation up to something where you don't really want it to go in terms of discrimination. So I think that's a really good piece of advice. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess when we sort of move into lead generation and pre-screening leads, etc., in this process, I guess once you know what you're looking for, and it's time to see if you can actually find this perfect tenant that you're looking for. I guess when it comes to sort of the marketing aspect, collecting leads, sifting through, so to speak, from our perspective, what we've learned is the easiest way to start collecting leads is to use rental listing sites like Zillow, Zumper, apartments.com, and marketplaces like Facebook, getting your listing out to as many places as possible. And I guess from our, we're quite interested to know, Kim, from your perspective, what's your sort of process for getting these high quality leads, and which websites have you found the best to yield the best sort of result for you?
I'm smiling in anticipating this question because of the fact that we've been in this business for 40 years, right? And we represent the small investor. And based on national and international trends, the majority of landlords are small landlords who own between 1, 5, maybe 10 units. So that's the population that we represent. So a lot of our experience and historical information is coming from that scale of investors, not investors who have 200, 300 units, own 500, but that's not the space that we're in, and that's not the perspective that we're coming from. So going back 40 years, when we were managing my mother-in-law's multifamily units, and then started managing our properties, we used to put ads in newspapers with the phone number, right, and the description of the property. So that was interesting. So fast forward though. For the last, I would say, 6 or 7 years, we've hired a showing agent, basically a realtor, who handles all of the front end of our listings, right? And then they pass the baton to us to do the final due diligence and tenant selection. But on the front end, I know that our team members, who is that showing agent, they use Zillow, they use Trulia, apartment.com, like all of the top 10 platforms to list our units, including social media. They'll do ads on Facebook, that type of thing, to get the lead generation going, and provide us with all of the minimum documentation that we need to then take it to stage 2 and begin the due diligence of the granular level of screening that applicant. So, the process, again, like I mentioned, is all of the top 10 platforms to promote and, put that product out there that is available for rent.
And so that realtor that's sort of generating the leads for you, are they calling and pre-screening before they actually send that lead through to you? And I
Absolutely.
guess what does that sort of process look like? Do they have certain questions that you've set out for them to ask? Yeah, I guess maybe describe a little bit more about that process.
Sure, sure. And the answer to this question, I think, also addresses what I also teach to my coaching clients, to my mentees, about whether or not you're going to self-manage or if you're going to hire a property manager. And if you're going to hire a property manager, how you need to identify, vet, and manage that property manager. Okay, I'll put a pin there. So going back to our showing agent, we've had to groom them and make sure that they are articulating our company's culture and our criteria and requirements in the pre-screening, so that when they pass the baton, we have everything that we need. We have a copy of a government issued photo ID. We have 90 days of pay stubs. We have 90 days of bank statements. We have their rental history information. We have a full application that's fully, completely filled out, and that applicant meets our minimum credit score, and their salary meets 3 times the amount of the rent. So that showing agent has they've checked all those boxes, so that we're not wasting our time on the step 2 of the granular screening of that applicant. I'm not going back and saying, well, I only have 1 month's pay stubs, I only have 1 month's bank statement. No, they're giving us all that file and information, when they're passing it on to us, and then we're able to do our due diligence.
And have you, I guess, historically, before you had a realtor generating leads for you and pre-screening them, uh, I guess, how did it look from your perspective when you were generating these leads? Would you recommend going through a realtor or a person who's sort of doing that front end part of the lead generation?
So I think, and I firmly believe 120% that, any landlord should at some point have managed their own rental properties because they understand the process, right? And they can then articulate to that property manager or that showing agent like we have, they can clearly say these are our expectations and know that they are, doable. Like, don't tell me you can't get me 3 months of pay stubs or bank statements because I did that and I got that. And I've had that pushback or that conversation early on with, one of our new showing agents who did not provide me what we required, which is 3 months of the full bank statement, not just the summary page. I need every page of that bank statement. And this new, showing agent, which now, we're clicking, said to me, well, people really don't want to give all the pages. They just want to give you the summary. Our requirement is that you give us every single page of the bank statement for 3 months. If there was some bass in my voice just now, they heard the bass in my voice and they started giving me what we require, because in order for us to analyze the data, I can't just look at the summary page of a bank statement. I don't care if you go to Starbucks or Barnes and Noble or wherever you shop. I'm looking for consistency in paying your debt, and that can be displayed on those detailed pages of your bank statement. So there's a reason why we require it, and I think, for us, it has proved beneficial that, that we bring our team members up to the criteria and the standard that we need to operate as a business because they're representing us on the first line. So give us what we need to make it more efficient and effective, that we can move this process through the pipeline quickly.
Yeah, interesting about the 3 months. I know there's a lot of landlords that sort of skip over that step and they don't sort of go into that much detail. And I think just doing that extra little bit more work can really pay off, which is sort of how you've described. So great piece of advice there.
And Logan,
And
just to follow up on that, what that detailed information shows is consistency. I believe that past performance is an indication of future performance. I believe that past
100%.
performance is an indication of future performance. So if I can analyze your lifestyle trends, which is that you pay your gas bill on time, I can see your automatic, paycheck deposit. I can see that you, are paying your renter's insurance premium. I can see all that, and so it's an indication of what your future behavior is going to be.
Very interesting, yeah. And sort of just to touch on the lead generation and pre-screening sides, just to do a little bit of a plug for Landlord Studio. So you can obviously create a free listing on our platform and publish it, post it to all the top sites, including Zillow, just a click of the button. So if you are self-managing your properties, you're doing all the marketing yourself, this tool and this feature makes it really easy. And so when tenants come in and they see your property on Zillow, for instance, they can inquire for the property, and that lead will come back into Landlord Studio where you can then do the necessary follow-ups. And we also have some pre-screening questionnaires that go out automatically as well. So it makes that whole step a little bit more streamlined and easy. And so I guess once you've got that lead and that inquiry that's come in from your realtor, or if you're self-managing, what are those sorts of things so you've done that sort of pre-screening at the front. How do you go identifying which inquiries are really serious and which are likely to be, quality, and which are sort of just applying for every single property in the area, for instance?
And that latter may be true, even with a finalist. That's why we, I don't want to be sexist, but we like, we don't stop showing until we've got money in the bank, and all the documents signed. Because there are some individuals, for whatever reason, they may be relocating or have seen a variety of units that they like, and they'll throw application seeds, into a couple different properties. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to be mindful of that. And we've gone through the entire process historically, awarded it to a particular candidate, and they said, you know what, I found something already. So we just have to keep that process moving. But how do we get into the nitty gritty of things? Then we do the background check. We use a background screening system that we've been using for years. National Tenant Network is a little different than directly doing the credit check and getting that credit report directly. We can talk about that, but we do the background check, we do the credit check, and we begin to scrub through, calling in previous landlords, confirming employment, et cetera, et cetera. And what we have that we've created, which is our landlord checklist bundle, which you can find on our website. I'm a process person. Like, I want to make sure I'm checking all the boxes, right? So we have a checklist for screening an applicant. We have an 8-step process that we go through where we're, as I mentioned, calling not only their current landlord, but as far back as to many landlords as we can go. We are not only calling their employer, we're checking LinkedIn. We're looking, like, we're digging, we're Googling their company. We're looking at organizational charts. We are, really doing our due diligence to make sure that they're just not submitting a company and a person's name as their supervisor. And the credit check process that we use, because we know out on the market, like, we will get their application, we'll generate the background check, which is a criminal check, which checks for liens and judgments and other items. But there's also a process where the applicant can pay for the credit check, and that credit application or that credit report is sent to the processor, which could be us, which displays all of the trade lines and 60 days, 90 days on day. So we don't get that detailed report based on the platform that we use. They have a ranking system as far as their credit score goes, as far as their employment history goes, as far as their rental history goes. So we get a broad report card categorically to make a decision compared to the actual credit report that has all of the trade lines. So you have options out there as, someone who's processing applications.
Nice. And we'll include a link to that particular service in a follow-up email. I know someone asked about that, John. We'll include the link to those resources, etc. There's a few questions in here. We'll wait till the end to answer those, and we'll just jump into a little bit more about the screening reports, including the sort of TransUnion, the difference between them. I know Kim sort of mentioned a little bit of the differences between how she runs her reports versus your typical TransUnion or Credit My Smart Move type report. And so I guess just to talk a little bit to that and explain that process a bit. So I guess once you've generated those leads, you've done your viewings, you've got the serious applicants coming through. I guess that's really the final step. You start a screening report on these tenants to make sure that everything is in check. This means running screening report, checking references, previous landlords as far back as you can go, and then ultimately making the final decision before that tenant moves in. And so with Landlord Studio, you can run those reports. We have a direct integration with TransUnion. If you want to use the TransUnion integration to generate the Smart Move report, you can do that directly from inside the listings feature. And this is all, I guess the step is all about having the absolute confidence that everything is in check before you make that final decision to have them come in. Someone's just asked about the application fee. So landlord or the tenant can pay for it depending on your state laws. Some states require the landlord to pay for that tenant screening report. Others don't. Ours start at $45 for that report, which is typical sort of price for a screening report. You can use other services. They can go up to $60, $70 a report. Again, depending on the state, there are different thresholds at which you can charge. So make sure that you do your research before you jump into a screening report service, and making sure that it covers off everything that you're looking for as well. I guess just to dive a little bit more into this topic of tenant screening reports, I guess what are some of the tips that you have when it comes to getting a screening report and then actually understanding that report? You mentioned a little bit of the report before and the way that you do it, but I guess what are the sort of areas that you're really looking into to make sure that everything checks out, and things that you would require on that report?
Well, definitely that, again, that credit score and that credit report is a report card, a historical document that gives them a grade of whether or not they pay in full and on time for what they promised to pay. And I believe if we take it at face value, it is what it is. Now, we have had some applicants over the years. When we talk about their credit score, they'll admit, I have a horrible credit score, but it's because of student loans or identity theft. Some rare case like that. And then I think, with that, you have to marry, their reasoning with other documentation to confirm what it is that they're saying as to why they have a low credit score. But for us, in addition to the credit score and the credit report and the background check and the criminal check and the eviction check and speaking with their landlords, like that's the hard data. What I think has given us another perspective is that we not only are tracking their financial viability and their historical behavior, but we're also measuring their character and their integrity. And as a part of our checklist bundle, we have a checklist which includes questions that we ask on a Zoom meeting that we will do with applicants. It's like the final stage of the screening process. Pre-COVID, and it's stated on our application, part of the application process is visiting geographically, if it's viable, visiting where you currently live. Why do we want to do that? We want to see how you're living. Because if we have, acquired this asset, we've done a full gut rehab on it to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. We want to make sure that you not only have the financial feasibility and the track record, but you have the integrity and the character to come in and take care of our assets. So we want to see how you're living. I'm not ashamed to say that. Now, with COVID, that cut that process out. So what did we do? We began to use technology. So we instituted Zoom, right? And so we have a Zoom meeting. There's a list of open-end questions that we ask, and we shut up. Because people will tell you what you need to hear if you just listen, right? And so that's part of our checklist bundle. And so we culminate the outcome of that Zoom meeting, because also body language speaks a lot about a person's integrity, their honesty or their dishonesty, how their eyes shift, how their body moves. And so I'm able to read body language and marry that with the hard data of our screening process and make a determination if someone is honest or not. And that's what we want, someone who's honest and has character and good integrity, that's going to, have qualities of good communication, being timely. These soft skills also speak to a person's worthiness for us to give them the keys to our property, for them to give them the keys to our asset. Like, I need to trust you because we're getting into a marriage here. We're signing a contract. We're getting married. I'm putting a ring on your finger by giving you the key to my property, and we're married. So it's more than just that hard data. It's also standing in judgment of them.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of this has come with sort of experience over the years, particularly with learning how to read people's body language and dive deep into asking those open-ended questions. I guess just a question in the process time. So, how long would it sort of, how long would you give before needing to put a tenant in a rental property? How long does that process sort of take
I think
from lead generation all the way to move in?
it really depends on how quickly that applicant provides all their documentation, right? And if I had to guess, it could take 7 days. It could take less than 10 days, depending on how responsive and easily accessible their previous landlords are. Whether or not we can speak to their supervisor or go through their HR department and send a letter, versus an informal communication with their supervisor. So it depends on how quickly they can get all the documentation in, and then how quickly we can, do our due diligence by speaking to key individuals that's going to give us the answers that we need, and then scheduling that Zoom meeting or that site visit historically. But for us, it's not so much expediency as it is efficiency and due diligence. So we believe that having systems in place and processes in place, like that checklist bundle, to make sure I'm checking all the boxes. And hey, I mean, if you're urgent to move, but you haven't given me everything that I need, I can't check my box. That's not on me; it's on you. So you're holding up the process. But I mean, on the short end, it might take 7 days or less.
That's quite interesting. We've heard sort of various numbers in this realm. Some people taking up to 60 days to find that tenant, which seems quite far or a long time to really fill that vacancy.
So let me just revisit that, Logan. I was speaking 7 days for the processing of an application,
Right.
but your question was really from placing the
Lead
ad on
gen
Zillow to actually filling the unit. Again, so we
really
actually,
depends.
I'm going to adjust my time frame because we recently listed a unit in a very desirable area on a Friday. We had an application in. I think the showing agent did a showing on that Sunday. We had two applications in by Monday, and we
Yeah.
processed it and made a decision by that following Friday or Saturday.
So
Conversely, we've had a unit on the market, listed it, and it depending on the interest in it, or the suitability of it to someone, it's set for 3 months. So I think it
so
depends on
yeah,
the
depends on the
timing.
area and the targeting, price, desirability, time of year as well. I'd imagine as well. Yeah,
Exactly.
that interesting. Um, just moving on to sort of like, once that tenant is in the property, everything's going well. What I think one of the most important aspects is how you maintain that relationship. You talk a lot about, getting married. Once the marriage has happened, it's all happy days. How do you retain that sort of relationship as you go through the tenancy, and how what are some tips for sort of keeping that a healthy tenancy as you go through it?
Sure. Um, I'll respond to that by saying I coach a lot of my students around the framework of the psychology of the landlord. So what's your psychology as an investor? Who are you, right? What's your psychology? What's your motivation? What skills do you bring to the table? And also, what's the psychology of the tenant? Okay, what's their motivation? What's their character? What kind of integrity do they have? Again, looking at the softer side of this relationship. Okay, when we approve an applicant upon move-in day, of course, we're going to do that move-in walkthrough, but we're giving them a gift. You have a moving gift, a beautiful moving gift, right? So when we talk about relationship building, and I use, the analogy of marriage when I talk about this process, when you're courting someone, when you're dating someone, like you really want to give them the better side of you. You want to make them feel good. You might buy them a gift or whatever. So we're going to give that tenant a gift. Now, if we've sized them up, they've got the financial track record, they've got the integrity, the character that we want. We believe that the tenant psychology is going to say, this person is nice. Like they're giving me a gift. Oh my gosh, I love this, right? And so we're creating a culture because they're not just a paying customer. They are our on-site property manager. They are protecting our asset. We want them to feel comfortable, catered to, and satisfied that they are getting 120% service and accommodations for their rent. We want them to feel good. So, in reference to our character, we've got to deliver on everything that we've said that we're going to deliver before time and more than what's expected. So we're going to give them a gift. Probably a couple of days after they move in, we're going to follow up. Are there any issues that need to be addressed? We want to make them feel good, and we want to be responsive. If there's any issues, we want to be responsive. We have a less than 24-hour turnaround on responding to any kind of maintenance issues with our asset, because our team member, our on-site property manager is letting us know that there's something going on with our asset. We just had a tenant that moved in that unit that was listed on Friday and filled by the next Friday. When they moved in, the kitchen faucet, there was something disarrayed with the kitchen faucet. No problem. We're there the next day with a brand new faucet. Okay. You don't have to wait. We want to make sure that it's 120% to your satisfaction. So again, responsiveness, we're giving them a gift, we're creating a culture, and we're making sure that we have open lines of communication with them. And so conversely, we expect that back from them, right? So we do an annual tenant appreciation gift for all of our tenants. It could be a gift card. It could be, a promotional item. But we want to recognize, we want them to recognize that we appreciate them, that we appreciate them paying on time, in full, and taking care of our asset. Plus, it's a write-off. It's a business write-off. So, like, is no, it doesn't diminish who we are as a business, but we're, showing our affection for them, that we still love you. We gave you the moving gift, we gave you the key, and every year we want to recognize you as an important member on our bench. And then we also have a tenant referral program. What does that mean? If we have vacant units and we have great tenants, we want more people like you. Right? So we have a tenant referral program where they will get a monetary reward if they can pull someone from their village, from their, one of their colleagues or somebody from their family that has the same character and financial track record that they do, to move into one of our units. So those are some of the things that we do.
I'm going to use that gift on arrival for my next rental property. What are some examples that you've given in terms of the gifts?
Sure. So I found this really neat gift bag that says "Welcome Home." It's in the shape of a house, and we put all kinds of kitchen stuff in there, like dish detergent liquid, a box of tissues, chocolates, a candle sometimes. What else do we put in there? Dish towels, that kind of thing.
Such a low cost for such a big psychological impact.
Exactly.
Someone's just mentioned they also use the tenant referral incentive. Oh no, they're going to use that. Sorry. It's actually a great way to get applicants that are more like the previous tenant. So it's very commonly used in lots of different businesses. So yeah, definitely use that for your next tenant. And sort of just to cover a little bit how Landlord Studio can help you with that tenant relationship as well. I've got to do a plug here, obviously. So collecting rent is a big thing as well. Managing maintenance requests, that communication that Kim talks about. You can use tools to really automate some of the stuff and make the experience a lot better for tenants overall. So be sure to check out Landlord Studio. We do have a lot of these features, from automatic rent payments, and all that sort of good stuff as well. So there are tools now that just help you with this process, so it doesn't have to be so manual.
Mm-mm.
And I guess sort of over your career, there must have been some tenants that, didn't work out, not necessarily evictions, but potentially ones that, you've had to move on, or that just weren't suitable. What are some sort of bad tenant examples, and how do you sort of maintain that relationship?
And I thought about that question, and I certainly don't want to project that we've been like 100% flawless in this experience, but we've been probably like 95%
Mm,
awesome tenants, because I believe that the work on the front end really yields you, the benefit, and the healthiness of the relationship. Now, I do have an example, though. I have one example, really. And when we talk about, typically why do tenants move on, what we have found primarily is because a couple will move in together and they'll move out
mm,
separately.
yeah.
There's a breakup somewhere, right? And so we had that situation where the husband left, the wife stayed, she couldn't afford it. So she had a roommate that moved in who was screened and approved and everything. Fast forward, that new roommate befriended the local drug dealer, who was a female, happened to be a female, right? And we have great relationships with our neighbors. And one day we get a call from a neighbor and say, "Hey, I didn't know you were renting to the local drug dealer." We're like, "Excuse me?" So, long story short, through communication and stern conversation to this new roommate, who tried to tell us, well, she's my friend, or she's babysitting the kids. No, in our lease documents it says no illegal drug activity, et cetera, et cetera. And she was pretty like, arrogant about, I can have who I want, and da, 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 da. So I mean, like, I am 5 feet even, and I don't get into zodiacs, but I'm a Libra, and as long as the scales are balanced, I'm fine. But when they're not, I turn into a different person, and she took me to that place. Um, and so, we had to think about our legal options. And as a company, we sat back and thought strategically about it. And so basically, they were at the end of their lease. And so in old school, we say we just slow rolled it and we let the lease run out. We did not renew it. And that's how we were able to get that person out of our property. But yeah, that was pretty dicey. And it was just an example of how some tenants don't understand how their activities can compromise our asset, you know. And that was a neighborhood that was changing. The DA. I mean, there was a lot of crack houses and that kind of things that had been taken from owners because of drug activity. And God forbid, I want our property to be taken because you befriended the local drug dealer. It's not going to happen. So we were able to unwind that and just get out of that situation.
I like that. Well, we've come to the end of the webinar, and really appreciate all those insights, and particularly when you sort of talk about business and operating it like a business, and um, altering the way that we do our business processes. I think that's really key and something we push for with our sort of landlord clients as well. So if you want to learn more about operating it properly as a business, there's a lot of content out there on our website. Go check out Kim's resources as well. We'll jump into the questions now. There's been a few questions, particularly around your checklist, which some of the attendees would love to see. So, Kiana, can we see your checklist? It would be very helpful. I guess, question, Kim, where can everyone go to find more resources, more about this checklist, more educational content?
Sure, they can go to our website, which is www.lldocs30.com.
Cool.
LLDOCS30.com, and go to our shop, and they will see all of our documents. We have our landlord document bundle, which includes leases and applications and addendums, everything that you would need to manage your property. And also our checklist bundle. We have landlord journals on our website. If you need inspiration, motivation, and accountability, we have those as well. And I'm about to launch another real estate gratitude journal, and I'm actually writing a book on property management.
Nice. We'll include some of those links in our follow-up email as well. I know there was a question around Section 8 and voucher tenants. Have you ever dealt with these before? Have you rented to these before?
All are welcome to apply for our units. We haven't had any that have occupied, but anybody can apply.
Yeah, and I think that's quite important, particularly around discrimination as well. You got to make sure that you are being open to everyone. So,
Absolutely.
again, lots of content. You treat them as every applicant as normal. So that's where all these checklists come into place, and sort of the content from this webinar. Hopefully, you've learned something about that process, etc. And there was one more question about the legalities. If a landlord asked me about a past tenant, I think from our recommendation, it would be wise to seek legal advice from your attorney around your process as well, particularly when communicating with past tenants, etc. So make sure that you are reaching out to the necessary people and having someone on your side for that. So really appreciate you coming on today, Kim. Great to catch up again. Your insights, strategies are invaluable, and I think there's a lot of great content in here. We've covered a lot of ground: setting tenant criteria, generating quality leads, comprehensive tenant screening reports, etc. Again, for those who are listening, reach out to Kim through social media. Check out her website, lldocs30.com, I believe. We'll include a link to that as well. And if you want to check out Landlord Studio, you can jump on our website as well, landlordstudio.com. If you're already using Landlord Studio, make sure you check out the rental listings, tenant screening, syndication features. We've got some new features coming up around applications. So there will be a full end-to-end process. And again, really appreciate everyone coming on today and joining us on today's webinar. And again, thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. And I hope everyone has a great day and rest of the month.
Thanks, Logan.
No problem. We'll see you again. And until next time, happy landlording. Cheers.